Welcome to my channel. This is Hot Mess and Hot Glue. My name is Lynn and I am the hot mess that's behind all of this hot glue. Thank you so much for joining me today. Today's video is really fun. I've got some fall home decor. I'm not doing tray decor this video. I know I've done that the last couple, but this one, it is actual home decor. Super easy and they look so nice. I've already gotten compliments. My neighbor came by and she was asking me where I bought them, and I was so excited to tell her I made them. So I hope you guys enjoy them as much as I do. And remember, if you love the video, please give it a big thumbs up because it helps me tremendously here on YouTube. Hope you enjoy. Jumping into the first project here, this one was the one that kind of took me the longest, and that's only because I chose to hand paint those little pumpkins. So taking this round kind of wreath that I got from the Target dollar spot last year, I had made a couple things with it, and this one was just kind of lying around. It'd been really banged up and it was in the work shed, so I decided I needed to give it some use instead of just having it hang around in the shed. Sanding it down with 100 grit sandpaper just kind of got rid of that top layer of junk and any kind of dings and imperfections, and there's even like smudges of paint here and there on it, so it just needed to be cleaned up a little bit. I did not go into this with really any plan. I just knew that I wanted to have something for the wall. I wasn't really committed to having it be an outdoor wreath. I have another idea in mind for something for the front door. However, I wanted to put something in the dining room, and this just kind of came about as I went. Now, I have been loving this bare wood stain. It's a water-based wood stain and the color is Special Walnut. I've really been enjoying this. I decided to use both the Special Walnut and the Waverly Antiquing Wax, and when I applied them, I realized that the Special Walnut was just a little too light. So I went back over all of the areas. Originally, I thought I was just going to use Special Walnut top and bottom and then do the Waverly Antiquing Wax here in the middle, but again, I just didn't work for me. There was something visually about it that I didn't like. So I went through and I changed it so that it's all the same stain, and I ended up liking that much better. So in order to kind of add a little bit of my fall colors, I decided to use this blue paint that I've been using in almost all my fall videos this series. This is Rust-Oleum's chalked paint, and I looked up the color finally, and it's ocean blue. So at first I thought I wanted to almost have a stained effect. However, it was looking a little too coastal, which is kind of funny because the name of the paint is actually Coastal Blue, but I really wanted to bring out that deeper blue color, and so I decided not to mute the color at all and to just keep it that real vibrant blue. So this little Hello Fall wagon wood shape here, this is one of the kind of do-it-yourself coloring packs that come in the Crafter Square section, and it's got, I believe it comes with, can't remember if this one came with markers or paint, but either way, I usually just save those and set them aside and either give them to the daycare, or, you know, my kids will use them somewhere along the line. Anyway, what I wanted to do is, I really liked the image on here. However, I didn't want it to look like I was coloring in a coloring book when I went to go paint over it. And I didn't want to paint over it so severely that I couldn't see the details. So what I did was I took my tracing paper that I love, I copied over the image, and I didn't know how much of it I was going to use, and so I copied over everything. Once I got that painted over white for a blank slate, and while it was drying, I decided to go through, clean up some of the wreath frame here, and give it a light sanding. Now, it does give that blue a little bit of a muted color when I do that, but it's not terrible, and it really doesn't change the color all that much. So again, as I'm kind of playing around with materials that I have on hand, I pull out these Crafter Square wood planks, and I decide, well, maybe if I don't use the wagon portion, I don't transfer, you know, that part over, I can put this plank on it and maybe just add like a welcome sign or some kind of verbiage I really hadn't quite decided on. But I knew that I was going to need to trim this down, so after tracing over the square, I went through it with my utility knife and I removed the areas that were going to be seen past the shape of the wood plank. Now, the wood is very, very thin and it cuts really easily. I did a couple passes with my plain old X-Acto utility knife, and then I went through with my wire cutters to kind of trim up the sides. Now, when you do that, I ended up with some rougher edges, and I didn't want that. Even though I ended up covering them, I still just didn't want a bunch of rough edges. So I gave it a real quick sand with my palm sander right there on my desktop. So again, using these planks, I decided to give them the same stain as I did on the wood wreath, and I stain a total of 3 of these wood planks. Now, they do come in a pack of 6 for $1, which is just such a good deal. Every time I see these, I pick them up. Now, for my stores, they were really hard to find. However, they are now selling them more frequently in the stores, and I've been able to find them online. And they also come with the option of a square one. So if you are having a hard time finding them and you want to go online, I would say do so. I mean, you get a case and it's $24, but you get a mix of these ones and the square ones. So once I have the, once it's all stained, I wanted to set that aside, and while it was drying, I decided to go through and transfer over using my carbon paper that I like to use, which is always going to be linked down below in my description box. And I typically like to use a thin pencil. The carbon paper does come with little transfer tools, but by using the pencil, it does leave that, writing on the paper. So I know where I've already transferred because I will forget. So once I get that all transferred over, I decide to give it a light coat of Nimbus by Waverly. It's this kind of pale silver gray. It's not metallic-y at all. They also have a silver called Silver Lining, but that was just a little too silver for me. I really wanted this muted gray color because I knew I was going to try and do some kind of a painting technique on this. Now, I typically do not paint, and so this process took me a little while, but it was extremely relaxing, and I really didn't mind the time that it took. So to create the detail on the stems of the pumpkins, I'm painting it with a small paintbrush using the Antique Wax by Waverly. And because of the white base that's on there, it's kind of seeping through and it's giving some natural highlights to the stems. And they just came out so pretty, and I was really shocked at how well they came out. Now, to do the ribs, I kind of just played around with a mixture. So to start, I found it was a little bit easier if I used a fresh small coat of Nimbus, and that way the paint was still wet. Then immediately I would go back over with a small amount of antiquing wax, and I would just kind of blend the 2 colors. So I went back and forth doing this. Again, I'm not a skilled painter by any means. I'm kind of just making this up as I go. I'm looking at it, just kind of seeing visually what's working, what's not working, and I just kind of play with it as I go along. Again, this process took me, I would say, a good hour to do all 3 of these pumpkins. However, I know I mention it, if not every video, at least every other video. This is the part that's extremely relaxing to me. Now, I wasn't going to make you guys sit through and watch me paint every single pumpkin. I did the exact same technique, and again, I just kind of fiddled with it. I put on some TV in the background, I listened, I painted, and I zoned out, and it was extremely relaxing. Even though I'm going to be covering this portion up with one of those stained planks, I still didn't want there to be any kind of like color variation or seepage if you were to look at it from the side. So I decided to give this 1 coat of the antiquing wax also. Again, so now that we've got our planks, and this is when I decided 1 wasn't going to be enough. As I was kind of playing around, I thought that making this a little bit more dimensional, and by raising it up off of the sign just a little bit, I could maybe add a couple little flowers, some other details. And so in order to create kind of a box and to raise the plank off of the little pumpkin picture, I'm just adding some tumbling tower blocks and then I will attach the second plank to the tumbling tower blocks. I then go through and I make sure that, again, the blocks are stained, everything looks the same, so that if you see it from the side, it's all going to look like it's one piece and it's meant to be. While I was attaching the first one, I then thought, okay, it might be kind of cool if I do one on the back and add, you know, more dimension to this piece, because then I can add small flowers maybe to the front, maybe some taller flowers in the back, so it's not blocking the hour long of hard work I put into painting those pumpkins. So here I am just adding some of the random florals that I have. Now this is a willow floral. I have this in kind of like a mustard color, and it's a little bit of a purple color. I've got these orange hydrangeas. Now all of these florals are from the Dollar Tree, and I'm really just adding them in as I go. I have really no pattern. These little I think they're like fluffs or something. I don't know. They're just these little adorable styrofoam balls. And once I get the floral arrangement where I want it, it's time to attach it to the frame itself. I am going to use both wood glue and hot glue, and I use a generous amount of the wood glue. I do not want this to fall apart. You know, I really want this to last for at least this season, if not a couple more past that. I did want to add some of a natural element. So on some skewers, I hot glued some random beads that I had, and then I also had these, I don't know, I think they're called jute twine, no, like twine balls or whatever. They're just these little decorative balls, and these are the smallest size that I've been able to find. They're pretty tiny. They look a little bit bigger in the picture, but they're actually pretty tiny. I hot glued those to skewers as well, and I just chose one of each of the colors that I had on hand. Again, this is just to add a little bit of a natural element. Now inside those flowers in the middle there, I wasn't happy with how they were looking, and so what I did was I took this little skewer. Now it's not a skewer, sorry, it's actually a drink stirrer that I got from, this came from Hobby Lobby. On the side, I tried showing, I think I covered it with my picture, and I'm so sorry. They have toothpicks at Dollar Tree that have these little beads on them also. And those are more for like, like catering and things like that. You could do the exact same thing. You'd probably want to paint the bead, because the ones that I had are gold, and I didn't want the gold accent. But if I didn't have the ones from Hobby Lobby, those would have been the ones that I used. Now, the reason I suggest those instead of regular beads is because beads will have a hole in them. And when I tried to place a regular bead inside the flower, whether I put, the hole of the bead to the sides or not, you could still see it. And it was very obvious that I was, placing a bead in there. And I just didn't like that. I wanted to take the extra step and kind of pay attention to that detail. And so using these was a great option. If you use the skewer one, you'll want to snip the top of the one that comes from the Dollar Tree, and you'll want to paint the entire bead. And then that way, when you go to glue it down, it's all going to look like one color, and you're going to get the exact same result. And you don't have to go all the way to Hobby Lobby. Now, at Hobby Lobby, I found these in the party section, where they have kind of like some of their catering supplies, where you can find like their paper plates, their paper towels, not paper towels, table covers. That's what I meant to say. The most difficult process for me when I work with florals is just trying to figure out what looks good. How do I want them to be seated? And so I'm very, very controlling when it comes to florals. I do it all the time. Anytime I place a floral somewhere, I like to hot glue it down so that it stays in the position that I want it. So I had all of the flowers that I was really wanting to work with placed towards the back, and I didn't want this little front portion to just be wasted. And then I remembered I had come across some clear LED lights the last time I was at the Dollar Tree, and I thought that it would be a really fun option to add a little bit of lighted ambiance to it, so that in the evening when it's time to settle down and you're just relaxing, I am just a huge fan of anything that has lights, some kind of glowing aspect to it, so that you don't have to have all your house lights on. You can have just a little bit of that glowing, accent here and there around with the decor. However, I did not want this to stick out. I wanted it to be flush. So I stuck it into the backing. And at first I thought, okay, I'll just tape it so that, you know, I don't have to unscrew it every single time I use it. And then I realized, okay, no, that's not really going to work for me. I just didn't like it. I didn't think that it was going to be nearly as practical as my intentions were. I kind of rummaged through some of my spare parts, some of my, you know, half-made crafts and stuff that I started and didn't finish. And I came across this wood round that I know I originally got at Hobby Lobby in a pack of either 3 or 4. And I had stained it previously because I was using it to top a candle holder, and that way it was just like a decorative piece for a candle holder. I decided to trace the back of it so that I'd have an easier time finding where I can add this little screw. Now, I did not screw it in completely. That way it would give me the option to kind of swivel it side to side and create a blocked opening. This way, if I did decide to use it outside, that little area was going to be protected better. And here is how it looks when it's all finished. I love the lights. I love the flowers. This was a ton of fun. I did leave that front portion blank, but I can always change it in the future. So now we're going to move on to this project, which is just a small little wall hanging. I wanted to keep it simple. I wanted to keep it kind of modern. And so by using this adorable picture frame from the Dollar Tree, I love the wood beads. I love the natural colored wood. They do have other ones that come, like I believe the picture frames are black, some are white, but they usually have these natural colored beads. And it's so nice to have that accent because then you don't have to go in and add it yourself. So giving this one good coat of white chalk paint, also by Waverly, I'm gonna then add a blue accent to it using the Rust-Oleum Ocean Blue that I've been using throughout my series. I dab it on kind of thick here in the middle because what I want to do is then spread it out towards the edges, but I want it to have kind of a natural occurring, like wisping effect. So I just put it on really thick, and then I take the brush and I kind of swipe it towards the sides and on the top and the bottom. And once that's dried, I went through with my Cricut and I just added a small little Hello Fall. I wanted to use the Cricut because I didn't have stickers that were going to match the aesthetic of the font that I was looking for, and I wasn't 100% sure that I was going to be able to freehand it and have it look the way that I wanted it to. I was trying to go for a little bit more of a high-end appeal with these projects. The font that I used was Front Porch, and that's it for this one. I mean, this project took me 10 minutes maybe, and most of that was drying time. This next one here is a slightly inspired one. I did go on Joann's and saw something similar. I'm using a 12 by 12 frame from from IKEA. However, Dollar Tree does have an option. You can go online and find it if you can't find it in your store, but it is one that I see quite frequently. I'm using vinyl for the backing of this because I liked the matte finish and I didn't have anything in scrapbook paper that was the color and the sheen that I was looking for. I do always get my vinyl when it's 50% off. I will not pay full price for it. Taking this little wood plaque. Now this wood plaque I got off Amazon, and I will absolutely have this linked down below in my description box. And I'm staining it with the special walnut that I've just been obsessed with. Again, I mentioned Crafter Square does have an option for these. If you do not feel like going to Amazon and buying them there, you can get 6 of these for $1. Again, heading back to my Cricut using the same font, Front Porch, I just wrote the word family, as you can see here. So originally I thought that I would paint some upholstery tacks, trim them down, and then I would hammer them into this little piece of wood. And I'm not sure exactly what I was doing wrong, but I wasn't getting these to go in right. I was scratching the paint really bad. And so I just kind of thought, okay, I'm just going to do without it. And I moved on, and then I made this little sign here. Now I cannot remember what the font was on this one, and I accidentally deleted my project. So I will do my best to go back through and look for it and see if I can link it in the description box. Using my chalkboard paint by Folk Art, which is a plaid product, I'm going to just paint these stickers from the Dollar Tree, give them one good coat, and when I stipple them with my brush, I find that I don't have to do more than one coat. That's what I decided to use instead of the upholstery tacks, and these worked out just fine. I actually liked the size of these better. I feel like the upholstery tacks would have been just a little too big for the smaller size that this little wood plaque comes in. So I just add a tiny little dot of hot glue. Now what I also do is I also want to make sure that I don't have a ton of overhang on the paint. So when you peel it off, I just kind of take my finger and I rub over the sides, and that gets rid of anything extra. To reassemble this, I'm going to use some JB Weld super glue. I get this at Walmart. You can find it anywhere and it works amazing. Of course, I'm going to couple that with hot glue, and here we go. Easy project. This one looks so good and so store-bought. All right, so now this is nothing groundbreaking. I know that using cutting boards from the Dollar Tree to make, you know, a pumpkin shape is nothing absolutely unique or new. I've personally never done it, but I really liked the way that it looked, so I decided I would make my own. To add a little bit of my own details to it, I decide to tape off a portion after I've measured it, and I'm going to give it 2 coats of chalk paint by Waverly. It's the white chalk paint by Waverly. Now to add the stems, my husband showed me how to use our miter saw, and to practice, we had cut these top portions off of the paint mixing sticks that you can get at the Home Depot for $1. And so I went to the work shed and I found the little remnants that we had cut off, and I decided to stain those to use those as our pumpkin stem, which I'm sure other YouTube creators have used the exact same materials. So I'm not trying to claim that this was my genius idea. I absolutely got this from multiple creators and their ingenious ideas. I'm super sloppy apparently when I was painting, and so I just used a little bit of sandpaper to remove the extra. Now I'm using a clear Scotch tape to tape off this next portion because I actually want to make sure that I can see where that line is. And I'm just going to add a little detail. I thought that by taping that portion off and staining the top portion with the Waverly Antiquing Wax, that I would be able to just kind of add it, like, again, just a little detail. When I was comparing this to the stem, it was much lighter, and that's probably because this little cutting board is made of bamboo and it's a completely different wood. So I just had to place a couple coats to get it as close as possible. Wasn't too worried personally about any kind of color variation because that's really not where I wanted the eye to be drawn. I was really going for that detail here on the white portion that I painted. Using the rest of these rub-on transfers that I was gifted by my friend Megan over at Painted and Distressed, I just cut out the images to make them fit a little bit better, rubbed them, transferred them on, and there we go. I added just a small faux leather tag from Hobby Lobby, and this was just so simple and beautiful. Our next project here. You guys, this is so simple, so easy. I almost debated on even putting this in here and calling it a project. I found this cutting board at the thrift store for 99 cents, and it was originally a Target dollar spot product. I'm assuming it was probably from last year. I took it to the shed. I sanded it down with 100 grit sandpaper to get rid of all the yuck, and I washed it really good. So once it was all washed and clean, still didn't feel like that rope was clean, so I decided to remove it and trash it. Everything about this I thought was really cute. I liked the little wood grain. I liked the detailing of the ribs. I did not like the orange. So that is all that I'm going to change on this. So I'm going to give the orange 2 coats of white by Waverly, and that's all I'm gonna do. Once it's completely dried, I just go through, clean it up a little bit, and it's as easy as that. Now, what I liked about this is it can be used as both a sitting tray to put maybe a coffee cup on, or some kind of decor, or it can be a shelf sitter that just kind of adds some background decor. So here it is styled a couple ways. I've just got this little beaded garland on it to kind of show that. And then also you can use it as tabletop decor as well. You guys, thank you again for watching. I really do appreciate it every time you guys click on my video to spend some time with me. If you like the video, please give it a big thumbs up. Like I said, it really helps me out. So as always, let's take a little 5-minute self-care checklist. Please make sure that you're taking very good care of yourself. And one thing you can do is by taking these little 5-minute steps. Now, I think the first two are kind of obvious. It is kind of hard to write nice things about ourselves. If animals, like if you've lost an animal recently, maybe don't do animals. You know, you don't want to do something that's going to trigger more sadness or disconnection. So one of the main ones for me is booking the appointment that I've been putting off. I am really bad about that, but then also going outside is very important. If you have any questions, if you or a loved one needs help, please reach out. Heart Support's here for you. You're not alone.